So when you have a derby car that just keeps putting up fight, even though the owner slash driver makes mistakes or the testosterone in the moment gets the best of them, you just keep throwing her in the pit. So again, this girl, she took second at transfer. And as I'm looking over my mistake, which put the core support up into the motor, I do believe all we have to replace is our throttle body, which sits in the air intake there, that sits on top of the plastic intake, sits on top of these. You can see I cut out the core support that was pressed so far back it was crushed and pressed on top of that guy sitting there. A little bit of damage to the mounts, but I'm going to cover that up and we're going to run to the local salvage yard and see if we can get that intake. And if that is it, we're going to loop some radiator lines. We're going to clean up the front end, put a new Cobalt rebar on the front bumper, and see if we can throw her in the pit again. So we've got our plastic air intake there. I'm not sure exactly what that's called. It sits on top of the motor out. Looking to grab it again. Grab it off of buddy John Lucas. Appreciate him. He hooked me up with the right front strut and CV. Everything I needed for the axle there, the CV shaft, everything, and took care of me. And he's going to let me borrow his off the Cobalt. And of course, if I damage it, I'll buy him a new one from a salvage yard, but he's going to let me take it. So it just covered up that, so no rain or anything gets down in there, but all the plugs and everything seem to be good to go. So here's our method of madness. Got to clean up the core here. Obviously the radiator and all that's gone. We'll loop the radiator line, which runs right there. That main line there runs back in. We're going to loop it over to where that guy is all beat up. And now I have the correct piece to relieve pressure when I loop the radiator lines. I'll show that here. Shout out to Shavitz, him and his dad, educating me on that so I don't blow the hose out and lose my load myself. I got a rebar in the back off a Cobalt we ran earlier this year, so we'll get that on as well. And the front should be good. And around the back, we're gonna look to just beat up from the wheels here, cut out that plastic piece there, take both our ratchet straps as well as a big sledgehammer and beat down and tight the trunk. And that should be pretty much it. So pretty much ready to go. Get that part on and that should be good. And then we're just going to look to compress this, make it as tight as possible, put a new tire on the front left if it's not holding air anymore. And she's ready to go into the pit one more time. We'll see. So just a quick look as we've got her pulled off of the trailer, just coasted her in here. Again, we didn't have everything together, so she would start up and then kind of sputter out. So our current problem, or not current problem, but here's our situation. So this is our throttle body, right, that sits right on top there, and then there is that plastic intake that is off a Cobalt, off buddy Lucas at Derby's. Then I'm probably gonna end up buying the Cobalt off him, so I'll have the air intake already. Now I have his throttle body as well with the plug. It's this one's an 07, his is an 05, I believe it is, but it's the same setup, so that's all great. That thing fits perfectly. But I want to use mine because as you can see, it's cracked there. I got to loosen that. I'm gonna do it right now, and it's a little bit turned. And then each of the bolts, to show here, should just slide right up. See how in essence, the teeth, or not the teeth, but what the bolts screw into have pulled out of the plastic. They were all damaged. So my thought and my current plan is, first we're gonna get that broken bolt piece there loose so that we can kind of turn it straight and see if we can get it snug on there. If so, that's perfect. Everything works. My thought then is I'm just going to take a little bit of Gorilla Glue probably, and I'm going to put it down into those where those have pulled out after I have the intake down flush. Just a little bit of glue to keep it in place. I mean, it shouldn't be an issue anyways. And if I'm taking punches there, it's Gorilla Glue or whatever glue. It's JB Cement or JB Weld rather. It don't matter. So that's the plan. So we're going to straighten that out, see if we can get it down flush again, because you can see right now there's a little gap there. That ain't going to work. That piece is slightly kind of turned. Probably will JB Weld that before if everything goes in here. And again, because I have to JB Weld it because mine is kind of busted here at where you bolt it in, I don't want to use the good one off of the 05 Cobalt, which is a good car, we're going to run after this one likely. So that's the plan. Just tinker around a little bit and see if she fires up. So we'll see. There is the plastic intake on top. Again, I still got to fix this guy. The JB Weld I used didn't quite have enough of a grip and it just kind of broke loose, and I finished breaking it off. So I'll use liquid, either JB, or not JB Weld, but some sort of a liquid glue. I got a couple, like Gorilla Glue or something I'll put on that. Should be good. But that is it. So yeah, put the bumper up front, loop the lines, see if she can get rid of that spurt or sputter that she has. Hoping so, because it really drives and rips in reverse like it should once the RPMs get up. And here we think all the way back together, we hope. So the throttle body, again, this bolt was cracked here. We tried to use our JB Weld. We have kind of the one you cut and then you kind of rub it together to mix it. We think / hope it's on there pretty good and tight. So this piece here, I put it on. I put it down in between the gaps of all the 3 bolts. That is, this bolt wasn't broke, the slot it goes into, but it was cracked here. So we put JB Weld down in there and then took the gasket maker and went all around both the top of this guy, around all the places where it would come together, as well as this piece when we put on, and even put some with like a brush, try to make sure we had it really good, all the spots could get to, and just fired it up. It runs, it definitely runs better, but it's like the throttle stuck, so I'm not entirely sure what that is, but it doesn't have any water yet. So there, you know, and right here is our hose. This, again, we have no radiator, so we're gonna loop that, put the plastic piece on, and hope we got it. So here we are back for our final look, throwing a couple things together, beating out some sheet metal, putting on a new rebar there off of our Cobalt we ran. Was the Memorial Day mayhem there. Our bumper didn't get touched at all, so that's that there. So this is her, the hood. Actually, we are going to take off once we're there. I'm going to leave it on there so I can just tie it down, and that way all that air force isn't hitting my plastic intake, which of course is the main bugaboo with this girl. And she runs when it's in gear. It really runs well once you get on the throttle, but it's really sputtering, and it's like, I don't know, it's like it's backfiring almost constantly until you get on the throttle, get the RPMs up to like 3,000 or so, and when you're in gear, it just takes off and flies like normal. I mean, I was going down the road with it about 35 mile an hour or so, and it was just running like normal. So we're not really sure. Gonna get there a little bit early. Lucas, shout out to him. He's got a one of those reader kits that you can plug in under the dash, and maybe we just have some sort of a sensor that's freaking out the motor, because everything is, I'll show everything underneath except for the plastic intake for this T22 Ecotech, excuse me, is off of this car. So the sensor for the airbox is, the intake is. Now the intake was slightly damaged around it, not the intake itself, but rather it's like a plastic mount that it sits in. I just rebuilt that and used gasket maker to seal it, so it really should be fine, and it's just spitting and sputtering. So not really sure. We're gonna risk it for the biscuit, as they say, but still has the stock tank. Again, that stuff wasn't touched. I mean, until we get up to about that line above the power plug there, we're really good. The back end, again, folded up perfectly from the first run. I just took the big hammer and beat down a little bit, try to crinkle a little bit together, so hopefully as it get hit, that goes down, and she just buttons up super tough along the back there. Just sprayed off a little bit of the mud. Again, from the first to the second run, that's where all the wheel damage in particular. The second run, I was able to do a nice job. Again, I got her down to second and just decided to do the dumb thing as she was getting hot with the stock sensor, coolant sensor. I didn't have a dummy on. I'm like, yeah, let's just send her to a bigger Cavalier's nose that went over my bumper and just cleared straight through into there. So not the smartest of decisions, but she's solid. She has so much body left. Just put a new tire on. That's why we're hoping for a good run. So we'll pop the hood here and I'll get her set up so we can take a look. So when looking under the hood, you'll notice I have properly, now I haven't completely tied it down yet, I might actually leave it something like that because it's kind of in a good spot. But that is a proper looping of the line. So I got it coming out just underneath the air plastic intake there, and then over here. And that right there is the overflow pressure piece that I have been missing. That's why if you don't have that, there's no way for pressure that's building to release. I found this out the hard way 2 or 3 times, still didn't understand what was wrong, as it just blew the line apart in essence. Well, that allows as pressure builds to dribble out pressure just like your overflow. I have a small tubing I'm going to put on it to just leave a little bit so it's kind of running down there, and again I'll secure that once I'm there. But yeah, that is how you probably do it. I actually took out the thermostat, which is right there. That guy, just 2 10 millimeter bolts on each side. I take it out and I just cut on the side and gut it so that it's constantly flowing. I know the thermostat, you know, it gets hot, the springs, and it kind of opens up to change water. But I'm like, you know what, with all the more water you get in it, even with a proper setup, I like the idea of it cycling. And I mean, does it work better or worse? I don't know. I mean, again, comment in any of these videos if you're someone that has more knowledge and wants to share your opinion. Do have the dummy sensor this time. She's going to get hotter. So you can see her right there. She is, again, just unplugged right now the side of the thermostat. You can see it there in the bottom right corner, and that is zip tied so she doesn't bounce around. That is our dummy sensor. The motor's going to cook. Hopefully we get a good 15 to 20 minutes out if that's needed, have some fun, and go from there. But this, again, the plastic intake, this is what I busted up. So the core support I pressed whenever his bumper went into mine, and it busted the plastic up something horrible. But this is just mine. I just unscrewed this and slid this off. So that is my sensor plug there for the intake, and it's my thermostat, or excuse me, my intake. So it wasn't damaged. And the thing that's really thrown me off is I actually have an 05 Cobalt. That's what this intake is off of. Again, shout out to Lucas, got some parts for this car off of him and that as well. And we put that intake on this, same exact intake and everything, and it does the same thing. It spits and sputters. So my intake isn't, or my throttle body, excuse me, doesn't seem to be anything wrong with it, because it's doing the exact same thing as his throttle body when we put it on it. But the plastic intake, it's the same exact mold. I know some people, whenever we're looking at salvage yards, they're like, well, do you have something like California Mission plastic air intake? And I'm like, I don't know. They're like, well, there's a difference, but his and mine are the exact same mold, like same comfort or design, form factor, everything. So don't think that's it. So hoping once we get there and hook up the sensor or the device to it, and maybe we have a sensor gone bad and that's it. But if not, we'll just hope for the best and run her. Put a little bit of spray foam just kind of around here. Again, this bumper, I was able to go through the stock on the outside, but I put a bolt on the inside there of each and just tighten that down. I mean, it's just the stock rebar, so it's not gonna be super tough. That's more for just defense or end of the derby, hit with whatever you can. You can see I ended up putting some foam spray around just a little bit. I mean, it bubbles up, but just a little bit around the bottom of that where I put gasket maker on top of the throttle body, as well as to where it sits in the motor, and tighten it down. Now, if you're someone that's saying, well, that's your issue right there, I just did that last night. So I've been moving things around. No wires or plugs were damaged. Look over all those, they're all good. So that I just put a little bit around the bottom there to maybe make sure as she's, you know, ripping and tearing, she stays together, because it's a little bit of bubble gum and prayers that my mount's there. And if that mount comes loose and that throttle body for any reason starts seeping air, the motor will not run right with these Ecotechs. So yeah, a little bit of a, you know, risk it, but again, the car has so much life left. Another lesson learned. It was dumb of me, even if the car was getting hot and I didn't think I had anything for the guy in first, you know, just pull the terminal, shut her down, say she's hot, she has nothing left. That's the smart way to do it. But this is her. We're heading to the Waterford Community Fair in PA, not far, about 35 or so minutes from our house. So hoping for some fun. We'll see if she's got any fight left in her after 2 runs. This is run number 3.